We're in the south of Spain, and we have for many weeks now been traveling slightly ahead of all the birds. And then you messaged just recently, Tim, and said, oh, actually 4K has massively overshot you, taken off, crossed already over into Africa. Can you give us a bit of an update on the last few days of his journey?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, this is classic adult Osprey. You know, compare it to the juveniles from the Tweed Valley who are taking their time a bit more. 4K had 10 days in northern France for his stopover, but since then he's just absolutely motored south. So he crossed, he flew through Spain in basically 2 days, and then crossed over into Morocco on the 23rd of September. And since then he got to the Atlas Mountains and went around the western edge of the Atlas Mountains, which most adult ospreys typically do. And then for the last couple of days, he's been flying across the Sahara Desert. So yesterday, I was just looking at the most recent data. He actually flew over 500 kilometers in the day in an almost perfect southwesterly direction. So he's heading down to the Guinea coast. And as of last night, he was not very far from the Senegal coast. So he was on Senegal border. So he was only about, or less than a day's flight from Senegal. So I would imagine that as we speak now, he's probably crossed into Senegal. So he will have completed the crossing of the Sahara. And obviously, that's a really demanding leg of the journey. Yeah. So it'd be really good to see him safely across again.
And have you been looking at all at the weather conditions he's choosing to fly in? Is he flying in headwinds and tailwinds and everything, or basically picking good weather and then going for it?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting that when he left that stopover site in northern France, I don't think it was any coincidence that he left on a day when there was a really quite, not particularly strong tailwind, but a tailwind. And that enabled him to fly right the way from northern France to northern Spain. And at least probably nearly a half of that journey was over the Bay of Biscay. But, you know, the difference to, say, the Tweed Valley bird that landed on the boat was that this one just knew exactly what he's doing. So he would have almost made the decision to go across the sea because he had a tailwind. Whereas some of the juveniles on their migration, they're just totally at the will of the weather. So they don't make decisions in the same way that adults do. Adults really are navigating, whereas juveniles are just kind of going on instinct. And then, you know, the fact that he flew, I haven't actually looked at the winds for yesterday, but the fact that he's made such good progress over the last 2 days through the desert, I would suggest probably means he's had tailwinds again. He's, you know, an almost perfect southwesterly track. And of course, because he's an adult bird, he's going to his known wintering site, which is on the Pongo River on the coast of Guinea. Hopefully somewhere you might be able to go later in the trip. But you know, as an adult bird, he's basically heading straight for that place. So he's somewhere he knows, and he's just basically motoring his way to there. And if I do it, just measuring it now on my computer, he's got about just under 900 kilometers to go, or he did yesterday. So I guess that could just be 4 or 5 days more flying and he might be there.
And have you got an idea of what sort of altitudes he's been doing, either across the Sahara or across Spain? You're only getting a position every hour.
Yeah, so, unfortunately. The data for this bird, basically the transmitter logs the bird's location every hour. So it's not quite as detailed as some that we're now able to follow, but it still shows that as he was flying across the Sahara, so I'm just looking at some of the altitudes here. There's one point here that's 1,600 meters. So
okay, wow,
you know, he's getting up to
that's
good
4,500 feet. That's really high. And then there's some lower, I presume. That would just give us an idea that it's actually he is thermaling and then cruising and thermaling and cruising rather than flapping.
Definitely. So the next one I look at here is only, there's one here that's over 2,000 meters. So, you know, getting up to really high altitude, but then he's going down much lower to sort of 600, 400. So it's real classic thermaling over the Sahara. Mm-hmm. So probably another reason that he has covered such good distances the last 2 days is that there will have been good thermal conditions. So when you've got, you know, good thermal updrafts, it means that they increase their altitude quickly and then they can glide fast between the thermals. So I guess he's just had really optimum flying conditions over the last couple of days.
And do you have a gut feeling of whether this navigation that 4K has learnt, is that a series of geographical points that you can see, and you can see a really long way if you're going up to 3,000 feet, you can, or 4,000 feet, even more, you can see a very long way? Or do you think it's more likely that he's got a GPS point of where the nest is and he's heading for that?
I think it's a combination of the two, because there's no doubt that if you look at the journeys, they do vary. Each journey, each migration track over successive years varies with the weather. So, they're not going down a precise flyway, but they will have kind of intermediate points that they seem to be navigating towards. So he always goes to that spot in France, but he always crosses the Strait of Gibraltar quite near to Gibraltar. So, he's kind of, there are these focal points of the migration. But I think probably, they must use geographical landmarks as well, because as you say, when they're flying at the altitude they are, then they can see such long distances,
long way.
cover coastline, follow coastlines and things like that. So I think it's probably a combination of the two factors, but obviously there's still a lot we don't really know, and in some ways it's quite nice we don't know everything, because I think there's that real element of mystery to migration that certainly I still find, and I know it captivates a lot of other people as well.
And so the exact tree that 4K is heading for, right? That will be a kind of base in Guinea. Do you know much more about that region? Have people been out there and seen him before?
No one's ever seen him on his wintering grounds. That's why it's exciting that you guys are heading down that way and have a chance of seeing him. I mean, I know from trying to look for known satellite tagged ospreys in West Africa myself, it's not always easy, because although they do have a predictable daily routine, they're not always perched where you want them to be, if they've gone off fishing or something. But he's got a regular spot on the Pongo River estuary that he goes to, and he will be going to the same trees. And I looked at the data for last winter, and there are certain areas he favoured, so we'll certainly be able to point you in the right direction. But I'd love to know more about that place. I mean, it's a Ramsar site, so it's clearly very good and an important site for a range of different species. But aside from looking at it on Google Earth, I don't know much about it. So anything you can find out would be fantastic.
We'll do our best. Thanks very much. Yeah, and keep us updated when he finally gets there.
I will.